On this episode of the Atlas Airguns podcast, we talk to Rock at RTI Arms. We discuss their inception as a company and their production of the Priest model, their profit line including the P3, as well as their new rifle, the Mora. If you've ever been interested in learning more about RTI Arms, this episode is for you.
Let's go ahead and start, and
Okay.
I'll just let the audience know who you are. So today I'm here with Rock. Is that ROK?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
ROK Rock from RTI Arms, and they are in Slovenia, and they've been around for a good minute now. And I wanted to have Rock on the program because I love his products. I obviously retail his products, and he has some really cool stuff coming in the pipe works, including the new Mora, Nightmare. I think that's translated in English, but we really wanted to sit down today and kind of talk about the history of RTI Arms as well as where they're going in the future. So first off, where are you in Slovenia?
So Slovenia is basically a very small country. The population is 2 million people. So it's basically 2 hours, like diagonal. If you want to make the longest path, it's like 2 hours. So we are located. It's southeast, so close to Croatia. But as I said, everything is close by in Slovenia and in Europe, and especially in Slovenia. Yeah.
So in Slovenia, what is the laws regarding to air guns? Are they perceived as regular firearms, or are they lax, kind of like in the United States?
Yeah. So we changed the law. Like I think it was 2009. Before that, it was just with an ID. And after that date, they basically limit the energy output to 20 joules. So if you want to buy over 20 joules, you have to basically register it. But it's not as simple as it sounds, because you have to actually do an exam and all that kind of stuff, which basically at the end you can buy a firearm. You need basically the same papers. So obviously, if you go through the process, you usually end up buying a firearm at the end, because they're cheaper, more powerful, and the same documentation is needed in Slovenia. So yeah, that was basically, we had it coming, because all Europe has more or less these similar restrictions. Some have on power, some have on caliber, but yeah, Europe. That's the problem.
Yeah, Europe is pretty crazy. Here we have it very good right now, but I think we're always going more towards the European model. So ironically, I mean, your guns, you probably have a harder time selling them in your own country than you do elsewhere, like the United States, because obviously you're a very high power gun on at least the Mora and the RTI Profit. Those are very high power guns.
Yeah, obviously we aim for foreign market, because as I said, Slovenia is like a very small market. There are quite a lot of shooters in general for firearms, but airguns don't really catch on, because as I said, at the end you buy like a rimfire or anything like that, if you want to go more into airguns. But there are a lot of like a break barrel airguns, the cheaper end. But when it comes to PCPs, there are just few enthusiasts who go all the way. But yeah, but we do have one thing which you don't have, which I have to brag. We can buy silencers as they were like loaf of bread.
Yeah.
This was recently changed. So yeah, I know that you have. It's like
it's like another firearm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like but 30 days wait.
Yeah. For now, it's totally free. They will probably put it on a license, But yeah, we had like a right-wing government for like 2 years, and we managed to push a lot of stuff in. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk about, before we get on to the more and this stuff that you're going to be coming out with in the future, let's talk about where your company's been. So the first gun that you guys produced was the Priest, am I correct?
Yeah.
And when did your company get established?
So it was around 2015 when we basically decided. So history goes obviously way back. My father started basically a firearms company, and he is a very, let's say, smart guy, or how do you say, like an inventor, something like that. So he enhanced a lot of stuff in his field. But at some point, we basically, if long story short, we decided to try to go into the manufacturing business. I mean, I will explain it later, but it's one thing is doing prototypes, and you can mill them until they fit, or lathe them until they fit. But once you do like a batch production, it's a different story. So he had a lot of prototypes over the years before we decided to try to go into the airgun business. But yeah, that it is obviously hard to do an airgun, but it is even harder to do a batch production. So everything has to fit. So yeah, so that was with the Priest one we started. I actually have it in the back. It's the one we keep around the house. It's the original one. So the Priest one, obviously without the one. So yeah, the idea here was what what we wanted to do is make a simple, basically hunting. We want to do a hunting PCP or hunting rifle. We back then also advertised, the, how do you call it, tethering. So when you take off the bottle and you put it in the backpack and use a longer hose, and then you would have like 2 kilos. I do kilos. I don't do pounds. I guess it's like 4 pounds, something like that. So the idea was we wanted to do something around hunting, like we thought we see a window that companies are not doing a good job for hunting. But soon, when we started, we found out that people compete and win and so on. And we focused more on that area. I mean, it's obviously want to have an accurate air gun in any case, no matter why you use it. But it is different. We would build it differently from the scratch up if we would want to do a bench rest gun, obviously.
So is that when you moved more towards the profit line?
So I hope that we won't lose sales, because I'm try to be very honest. So the main platform is basically, if I take it back, the main platform is basically the same. You have a bridge or a receiver. You have a front piece with the trigger and the cocking lever, and then a connecting pipe on the bottom where the high pressure air goes into the receiver, and a shroud. And so the one problem with this platform is that the connection between the rear and the rear and the front blocks, let's call it, is not very sturdy. We would like to have it more sturdy. Obviously, it's not that bad, since you can group quite well with P3, for example. It's basically very similar to the original Priest. So as I said, if we would build this as a bench gun, we would do it like we did with Mora, so that the connection is very sturdy. You cannot twist the rear and the front. Like you cannot twist it. Whereas with the P3 or any other revisions, let's call it, it's more prone to this. As I said, obviously it works quite well, but with Mora it works better. I can tell you that.
So basically, I'll throw in a little more communication for the listener. So what you're talking about is the rigidity and harmonic stuff on the.
Right, I forgot. We have voice only.
Yeah, so, well, we can do voice and video. So this is going to be both, right? So just for the consumer, especially in the American consumer, the harmonics come into play and the rigidity of the platform, the actual structural rigidity. And so the Mora is, from the sound of it, is a lot more rigid as a platform, and the harmonics are a little more fine-tuned specifically for bench. So before we get to that, though, so let's talk about all the different revisions. Now, I recently bought a P3 for myself, but before that, I've always had an interest in RTI Arms. A lot of my friends shot RTI. And one thing I always notice is the platforms, like, you have a new editions of it very fast, and then you have new regulators and all these new things. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And when I talked to you a few weeks ago, you said, well, one of the things we like to do as a company is always give our consumers the very best as soon as we have it. I think that's a really cool philosophy. So is that essentially why each one of those new editions came out so fast?
Yeah. So if I answer if I start from a different perspective, so the original idea was, so the priest was out, everything was going well, and then people, like, I think Americans mostly requested a side lever instead of a straight pull. We call it a straight pull. So once we basically started developing a side lever, we call it a Prophet, so the original Prophet. And back then, when we started, the only difference was the cocking style. So everything else was totally the same, except the front block was differently milled, because it incorporated a different style of cocking. So let's say, I don't know, 5 pieces were different. Everything else was totally the same. But then, sorry, I missed one point. So it was the original Priest, then we did the Priest 2. And with the Priest 2, we made a Prophet. So the Priest 2 and original Priest, there were a couple of differences. So what we wanted to do is change the name when we have some big change installed into the gun. Maybe it's not compatible backwards, some bigger major change. So for the minor changes, as you said, we try to evolve it, even though it's the same name, under the same name, and we want to keep it compatible. But when we have a major change, we would like to change the name as well. So with the Priest and Priest 2, this was the reason for the second version. The trigger was redesigned and not compatible anymore, and maybe some small changes here and there, but the main reason was the trigger. We made it basically we made it more complicated. So
right. By the way, that trigger at least for the P3, and I have shot, I think, a P2. Triggers are always exceedingly light on your platforms, and we have, I have a lot of guns that I sell, and a lot of times consumers will be very ecstatic about 14 ounces, something like that. P3, I mean, I think I can get those down to like 3 to 5 ounces, which is insane for, air guns. Most guys aren't even used to that light of a trigger.
Just checking how much is 5 ounces. Okay, yeah. Just to have a comparison in grams, I had to.
Is that typical for what you can see that you can get it down to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's what I've noticed on my pole because I have a scale, and so I think that's something that is a huge selling point for competitors because that is an incredibly light trigger, and that's zero modification. That's out of the
yeah,
box, just setting it. So that's usually if you're going to get a trigger from 14 down to 8 ounces, you have to do some modification. You have to polish the shear. You have to basically polish, put in lighter springs. But out of the box, the RTI is
yeah.
crazy light. So that's just something really cool. So what you said about the platforms is that any major change, you've kind of changed the name, demarcating it that there's some major renovation has happened inside the gun. So you went from the priest to the prophet, and then prophet 1, prophet 2, and now we're on the P3. And how's the performance of the P3? Because that's the current model that's out. What I've seen, I think in the world's title, the same one that Fatty got with the Ghost, I think the P3 came in second, and I think that
Yeah,
shooter
yeah,
only had that gun for a couple days.
yeah. So the Iranian team, which I didn't even know about. I mean, they told me they will come, but we didn't like sponsor them or anything like that. They said they would like to attend the. I think it was in Czech Republic. I think it was a World Cup, right? Bench rest,
Yes.
50 meters, and also 100. No, 50 and 25. I think this is the official. I forgot the name of the National Bench Rest Association. Yeah, so they wrote me an email and they said that they will attend the competition, but they have a very big problem with bringing the guns over from Iran, obviously, because all the sanctions and the politics anyway. So they asked us if we can like ship, I think 3 or 5 guns to some friend from from Czech Republic, and we did that. They brought, I think they brought their own regulators and some other stuff which they could like smuggle into the checked in luggage. And then they changed those parts with their own, and they did the competition. And yeah, they were one guy was second, and also others were quite good. One had some problem with one of his own modifications. I forgot what it was, so he couldn't shoot. He didn't even. I think he didn't even enter because that happened on the testing already. I think. So you know, hats off to them. Obviously, they are not as well equipped with not everything is available to them, but they
Yeah.
still manage
Yeah.
to do
On
quite well.
on Instagram, I always see them. Instagram and Facebook, it's always Iranians. Some
Yeah,
guys in Iraq too, but it's a pretty popular gun over there, and you can tell they're a clique of friends because they're all doing the same modification on the same gun. So it's pretty cool to see. So let's move on to the Mora. So with the P3 is the current
okay,
gun on the market. It's more of a hunting / bench rest gun. Oh, and before I do that, let's talk about extreme bench rest. A few years ago, with the introduction of the Prophet, that was the time you guys went to extreme bench rest. You guys like wiped everyone out on the 50-yard bench rest. That was kind of the introduction of the platform as a high competitive rifle.
yeah.
That 2016,
No, it was. I think it was 19.
19.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a very funny story. Gregor Kamenšek did a full journey video or experience of the EBR. Yeah, it was. Um, we don't compete, obviously. I didn't even shoot, but Gregor was shooting, and he doesn't compete. He has his own little range, and he loves shooting. And we said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. AOA is importing our products, and they asked us if we want to sponsor, and I think we sponsored 50 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we were totally unprepared because we were still like let's say polish the prophet. It was not quite ready, so we didn't practice at all. We were just figuring out why something is not working as it should and so on. So we were like solving that kind of how do you say, like a birth problems, or we have a saying in Slovenia.
Growing pains.
Yeah. So we thought that you get the flex for wind on the competition. We were wrong, and we were quite unprepared. Three of our team were shooting, and one was Francisco from Spain, who sells RTI in Spain. He was basically he shipped his own gun with DHL, and it arrived day after the competition. So he had to use Gregor's gun, and Gregor has a special cheek. You cannot see through scope using his guns. It's impossible. You have to really stuff the cheek piece inside your cheekbone to be able to look through. But Francisco won 50 yards with that gun.
Yeah.
And even in 100, no, not 100, 75, which is a qualification for 100. Gregor did the highest score. I think I forgot his name, Russian guy, matched his score not
Nikolai.
So long ago. Yeah, I think it was, I forgot. It was 2-4 something. I'm not sure. It was 2-4-6. I forgot. But they told us it's the highest score. But the first relay, I think you shoot twice, right? And the first time, I think it's twice 75, and then you qualify.
Correct. Yeah, I believe so.
And the first time, I mean, I don't know if you want to go into that. I can. It's a funny story.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay, so
this is an RTI podcast. This isn't whatever else podcast. Whatever you want to talk about. We can talk about ice cream if you want.
I don't know much about ice cream, but okay.
Yeah. So what happened on the 75?
Yeah. So the thing was, I think it when Gregor was shooting 50 yards, he had like a light strikes on a valve every couple of shots. So the hits were actually one row below when that happened. So I think it's 5 targets in a row, if I'm not mistaken, 5 by time, I think it is, right? And when he shot one row, and if this light strike happened, he hit a target below. So he had to skip it when he went to the second row. And we were, after he was finished, we were like, I just remembered something. It was actually a practice, and day before the 50 yard, and the 50 yard was like at 7 or 8 a.m., like the first group. And when we were trying, we didn't want to disassemble the gun because obviously you don't want to do that, we're just right before. And we were like brainstorming what could it be wrong and so on. And it was like the last group we made on the day before the competition. And then we went to check the targets. We went back to the guns, and we drove back to AOA's shop to do a few more shots at their outdoor range. And Gregor couldn't hit the target. And we were struggling with that. Instead of trying to solve the valve problem, we struggled why he cannot hit the target anymore. And we found out after I don't know how many minutes that somebody, when we went to check the target, was like turning the turret of the scope. Exactly one turn. He had to go like 5 yards away from the target and shoot to see where he's actually hitting. And then it clicked. Yeah, so did exactly one turn. And then we solved the problem, which was not really a problem. And we didn't have time to solve the valve problem. And then the next day he shot the 50 yard, and he had this problem, which I mentioned. So he hit second row every shot, every, I don't know, 5th or 10th shots. I don't know. Happened like 3 times in our cart.
Right. So like clockwork.
We didn't know. And then I think he finished, and then we went to the range where we could test fire it, and all the air dumped out. And then obviously we had to disassemble it. There was no nothing else to do. And then when we disassemble it, we found the problem. We changed that part. I forgot what exactly was wrong. But then Gregor said, "Oh, I remember now. I made my own piece, something on the valve, and I installed it. And I said to myself, I will change that with the original before we go to the USA." And he forgot. So yeah, it was, as I said, very unprofessional from us. But at the end, I think the result, was very good. We had three rifles or three people with two rifles competing, and we did,
very well.
A lot of noise among I don't know how many hundreds of FXs and day states.
Yep.
Because if you have 80% of some brand, obviously you will do good.
That's typical in the US. Like in Florida, I mean, it's changing a little bit, but right now I'd say it's like 90% FX in Florida.
Yeah.
And so
it's obviously you win as a brand.
Yeah. And so and statistically, exactly. Statistically, if you're going to a competition is being held and 90% is one brand or 50-50, whatever, the likelihood is they are going to meet the podium just by law of averages. But it is great. I like being the kind of outlier. I like being the guy with the gun that no one else has. That's something I've always enjoyed. Or the funny thing, like I have a camera that most people don't run. Most people run a Canon. I have the Panasonic. I always like those other items that are high quality that no one else has. And then it's cool when you go to a bench rest or, you go to a competition, you pull out that different gun that's not the majority out there. Everyone goes to and goes, "What is this?" And they're excited about it. And it's kind of cool sharing that. So let's go on. We just talked about the P3, the performance, and their profits and the 2019 EPR. Let's move on now, finally, to the Mora. That's the Nightmare. It's the new gun that you have coming out. I've seen a lot of it detailed in Iowa, other events that you've had this last year. And you've actually announced the gun a whole year ago. So it's been a year now that it's been coming out. But let's hear about it.
Yeah, so with Mora, obviously we wanted to do it faster, but we're a small team, and when we have orders to finish, research is like on pause and so on. So it's not like we can do everything at once, and also we changed the let's say the heart of the gun at least 3 times. It's actually it ended up not as the one which we initially had before the Priest one. Basically, we experimented with a lot of different stuff, and at some point we decided maybe we don't want to start our company with a very complicated airgun. Let's do a simpler one, and then the Priest one came out. And then we enhanced we upgraded, and we ended up with the P3. And I think we're coming to the point where it's not much left to be done to make it better. I mean, obviously it is, but it ends up like Legos, Sometimes it's just better to do it from scratch. It is more expensive, obviously, but at least we can do what we want from scratch, and that's why this is Mora now, our let's say a second platform, if we count all those earlier as a one platform. This is a lot of parts are compatible, but the let's say the expensive parts are not compatible. So the whole receiver and the front block, and I'm looking at the Priest one to list the parts. The barrel mount is different. It's not anymore like with the Prophet platform, where the shroud basically also adds to the sturdiness of the gun. But there on the Mora, it's different approach. Trigger is like generally the same, but in ounces, I'm gonna say 2.5. Right. Because I googled 5 ounces is like 140 grams.
That's a crazy light.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, everything is polished. I mean, those surfaces which you want them to be smooth, they are polished. We will do that with Profit as well from now on, obviously. But it's not going to be as light because we changed the leverages, let's call it like that. Yeah. So the principle is the same. The parts look the same. But you can adjust the leverages with the Mora, and it's not, dimensions are not totally the same, but the idea is the same. Yeah.
So let's do a little caveat here and talk specifically about the barrel and the shroud on the Mora, because I've done a little research before this podcast, and especially on the Iowa when they're doing some coverage on that event, I saw that basically the shroud and the barrel have some different mounting option. One's butted up against the front of the frame and one's separated, I believe. You have two options. Can you kind of tell the audience about that and why they would pick one over the other?
Yeah, so the idea was we wanted to test which will work best. So we call it like a truly free floating option, or barrel, where barrel is only mounted at the receiver, like a non-bullpup style of mounting the barrel, and no bottle clamps or anything like that. So it's truly mounted only in the receiver, or you can have its additional point of contact, which would be, like you said, at the front of the front block. So basically below your scope, let's say. And we wanted to basically test that and decide, and then pick one option, because if the free floating is really better, then we don't want to complicate things to have a barrel nut, we call it. But then at the end, we just decided we're gonna put both. We're gonna leave that option to the consumer. We will install the barrel nut on the gun just because we don't want to have it jumping around in the case.
Right.
And we also decided we will test. We do shoot each gun at it's in yards. It's like almost 30 yards. It's like 25 probably. It's 30 meters or 31 meters we have we detect bad barrels.
So have you seen the better performance with the truly free floated?
No. Sorry. Yes, I thought you're talking about. So it's those kind of things are hard to measure, to be honest.
Depending on the silencer that you might have, suppressor,
and also the
variables.
energy, the vibrations. It's that
Right.
it's not as straightforward as one would think. So what I want to say is, if you put it on or not, it's not going to be like 5 inches of grouping
Right.
with it, and half an inch without it. It's not as big. Gregor was shooting 9mm with barrel nut, and he said that he has never shot a 9mm as accurate as he did with Mora. He sent me, I think yesterday, a grouping from 70 meters with 5.5 or 25. I'm not sure. He sent me like a thumb and a hole next to it.
Right.
It was 15 shots all in the nail. And I didn't ask him how he shot it, with or without.
Yeah.
But we decided to leave that choice to the consumer.
But that's nice, because a lot of these guns, like, it doesn't matter the brand, but if I put, let's say, 10 different suppressors, or, we just call them moderators here for air guns, but if I put 10 different moderators on any platform, I'll have wildly different results. And the same thing with speed.
Yeah.
So I think having that option is going to be good. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that it's going to 9mm. That's huge. American consumers like big power, so the 9mm is going to be a big selling point here. What have you seen in power levels, and how's the performance been overall? You just mentioned Gregor had a good time with it, so kind of want to ask about that, because I know people are going to be asking about that.
I have a cheat sheet somewhere here. We used it on IWA. Let me just open it up. So in 9mm or 35 caliber, we got like 225 foot-pounds. That was tested at 200 bars, which is what we say maximum output pressure on the regulator. So those numbers were with 200 bars. And we also measured shot count with the small one is like a 500 cc. We got 12 shots, and 700 cc is 19 shots, and 1.1 liter is 30 shots.
And the 1.1 liter is the very big can in the front, the big tank.
Yeah, so it's actually shorter than the 700, but just the diameter is like quite
Wide.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the different configurations. You kind of just mentioned it. So you're going to have, is it 4 configurations of the Mora?
So it's 3 configurations. We decided we're going to put a name to those 3, like compact, standard, and sniper. So with compact, it's 20-inch barrel and the half a liter, so 500 cc bottle. So the barrel is basically, barrels are compatible with the Profits. And Profit Compact has the same length, so 20-inch, but the P3 or any other has like a 0.2 liter, so 200 cc bottle. But with Mora, we used for a compact, it's a 500 cc, so it's a big one. And then with the, so I said standard, it's going to be 700 cc and 24-inch barrel. And then a sniper, it's going to have a 1.1, so it's a 1100 cc and 28, right? Yeah, 28-inch barrel. What I wanted to say, yeah, so also one difference, and at least for now, the 1.1, the Sniper Edition, will not have M-lock rail. So what we did, we will put all in the package. For example, a standard version will come with a silencer as well, and with like a bottle shield with M-locks. So it's not for example, for a extended bipod. I mean, to put it more in front.
In the front,
so we
for
use
the
like a half,
right.
like a half pipe style of extension. So you can fit those that rail on compact and standard because the diameter of the bottle is the same. But with 1.1, it's a bigger diameter and the rail doesn't fit. We will probably make an offer a different rail for that, but for now we don't have it. So the prices will basically be all the same, if I'm not mistaken. Even the Sniper is going to be the same because we don't give you the rail, but you get a bigger bottle and the longer barrel, so it basically cancels out the cost.
So which of those models do you personally like the most?
So I would say the 1.1 is it doesn't look, if you look at the bottle, it's like enormous.
Yeah.
But when you have it on the gun, because the gun is also not small, it's quite a big gun. Everything like it's proportionate, so it's not.
Right.
It doesn't look as bad as you think. So I like that configuration a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need it.
And if you want smaller, you can get the P3. So no problem.
Yeah. It's a way smaller. Yeah.
Funny that when I first got the P3, well, I've thought this for the Profits for a while. When I first got it, I was like, it looks kind of like just not much on it. And then I had a consumer call me once and they said, I just don't get why it costs how much it costs. Like, I don't see what I'm getting. And I'm like, well, it still has a trigger, still has all the barrels, it still has everything there, just a minimalist design. It doesn't have a bunch of furniture on it. Yeah. And then when I put a scope on it for myself the first time, I was like, ooh, that looks good. And then the more I liked it, the more I looked at it, the more I liked it. And then that's, I obviously bought one. But anyway, so yeah, if the consumer doesn't like the big Mora, they can go to the P3 and problem solved. If they want to go for the big mama, they should get the Sniper for bench. I'm assuming that's going to be the bench gun. And then the compact. What's the weight on these Mora platforms?
Let me see
Just
if
do
I can.
standard. You don't have to do all three. Let's hear the
I
standard.
think it's like a little over 4 kilos. Let me see yeah, I have it here. It's like close to 10 pounds. So 9 to 10, depending on the configuration.
Right.
So it's not the lightest gun, but majority of the weight is in the receiver. So
Right.
once you shoulder it,
It's
it's
balanced
not
back
really,
here.
yeah, it's not really heavy.
Not
The
front
center
heavy.
of no, the center of mass is somewhere around your trigger finger or the grip. When you add the scope, you go backwards a little bit, so it's
Right.
right around the grip. So it's actually not. It doesn't feel as heavy as it sounds.
So let's talk about two more things. Let's talk about the valve design, and then after that, we'll talk about the shroud and how that functions, because I think you have some interesting things going on. So let's talk about the valve. So this is a balance valve as well?
Yeah. So we call it assisted valve because the idea is behind it is that the air helps it open and also it helps it close. So you obviously want to have these traits. So you want to open the valve as fast as possible and close it as fast as possible. So the what's the word? The rise time. For example, if you look at the graph, the rise time should be minimal, and the the opposite of rise time should be as fast as possible or as short as possible, um, because once the valve starts opening, pellet is already being pushed. Yeah, so if you are opening the valve like, I don't know, 2 milliseconds, the pellet is almost already out of the barrel. So obviously you have more potential if you would be able to open it faster. So the assisted valve, which, as I said, we call it that, it adds, it adds a lot of positive stuff, such as you use less force to open it. So that means lighter hammer spring, and then less vibrations, as you said. Hammer can be faster. You have I forgot, is it dwell time? I forgot from the firearms terminology. So the time once you pull the trigger and until the valve starts opening, there is some certain amount of time. You can reduce that, and so on. So a lot of positive stuff. Also some negative, obviously. For example, it's more complicated, that's for sure. And also you're not able to adjust the power with only the valve. So not valve, only with the hammer spring. So it acts almost like a binary valve, or a
Right.
binary anything. I know that with genders we're not having binary anymore,
Right.
but but with this valve,
You are, yeah.
so with the valve is like, if you go with a low setting of the hammer spring, the valve will not open because you're not using enough force to overcome the pressure on the other side.
And then once you go too far, you're not actually adding any efficiency.
Yeah,
And that's the
it
same
will
with a
work.
P3.
Yeah, exactly the same. It will work, obviously, but you might introduce extra vibrations which you don't really want. So that is why you have the adjustability option, not to adjust the energy or the velocity. You have to do that by pressure, but only to, like, fine tune your vibrations, let's say, or harmonics, if you want to say it like that.
Right. And for the consumer, I'll just boil it down a little bit. I have some hair on my desk. I'll boil it down for a little bit. So on a lot of other platforms, we have some kind of spring that we tighten. The more the spring's tight, the harder the hammer hits that valve. On the P3 and now the Mora, when you are adjusting that hammer spring, is not to hit it very hard, but just to open it efficiently. So that's the main difference. So in your instructions, I think it actually says you actually hear the difference just by the sound of the pellet going out of the barrel. And when that difference is met, that's where you stop, or you can do I think 3 clicks more. Up to
just to be on a safe side.
Yeah, but you don't go like all the way up to try to get extra power, because you won't get extra power. You're just going to be less efficient. So that's a really cool feature on that. Let's talk. So that's the pressure assisted valve. Is that what you call it?
Yeah. So with Mora, what we basically extended it to be externally adjustable. So you can actually adjust. So the valve is actually angled. I forgot the degree of angle, but it's angled. So two reasons. Basically, we are all about the efficiency. So it was mainly angled to get closer to the barrel or to the transfer port, or to make the transfer port as short as possible, because you are losing air, pressurizing the something which it's there just because you cannot have a zero space. So it was angled because of that mainly, but because of this angle, it actually allows us to make it externally adjustable. Because with the P3, the valve is inside the connecting pipe, and it's all, let's say, in line, and you are not able to adjust it because you cannot access it. So with the Mora, with that angle, we made it externally adjustable. So we can basically, what you can do with that is play with what we found out is you can adjust for consistency. Again, not for energy. It's not meant for that. I mean, you can do it, but you will not have a consistency between shots. So what you want to use that for is to adjust for consistency. Again, you do the 90% of adjustment for power is pressure, and then you play with the hammer spring and with the valve itself. So like a timing of the valve.
Correct.
Yeah. So this is the difference, and
that's a huge difference.
Obviously, it's a lot bigger because the ports are a lot bigger. It's actually we have a square port milled in from top to the plenum. So below the barrel is like a square. It's not round; it's square. It's a huge port.
Yeah, and even on the P3, or even compared to most rifles, the porting on at least into the barrel, you have the two windows with the little bridge in between. It allows a lot of airflow, and a lot of companies that I see, various companies, doesn't really matter the one. You see these small little holes on a barrel, and I mean that's one of the reasons the P3 is very powerful. So I can see the Mora being just as powerful. So I want to move on to the shroud, because I think that's one thing consumers might really be interested in. It looks like you have a fully integrated, basically a big suppressor as a shroud, and then you're able to add another suppressor on top of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is, obviously with the Prophet platform, we left just an empty space at the end of the shroud, and the shroud is like 1 inch, more or less. Inner diameter is smaller. I think outer is 1 inch. So there is not a lot of volume. You could add baffles, but you use a lot of volume putting the baffles in, and then you end up with a small amount of volume, which is used to reduce the sound. It works, but it costs a lot to have a very little result. So with Mora, we decided we're going to go on the other side of the spectrum. So we did like a 50 millimeter diameter of the shroud, which is almost as wide as the bottle. So the bottle is like 60, I think. So I think it's this in this
right, a significant amount of volume.
Yeah. So, and obviously we also wanted to add let's say integrated suppressor, or integrally suppressed, which is a lot of time used. So, and also another thing, what we wanted to achieve is to have it like a monocore design. By that I mean, once you take off the shroud, you don't want to have like 20 pieces flying all over, and then when you change the barrel, and if you only have the bare barrel, you would have to take the silencer as well, and then stack everything back together. So we decided to try to do it with a one-piece design. So yeah, it's basically the same design which we use for harsh suppressors, which are a simple. It's a simple design. A lot of companies are doing it. It's simple and works, and it also safe way to make it airgun only using that felt cloth or whatever you call it.
Right.
And yeah, this is what we want to do with already integrated. And then as I said, we will add external suppressor in the box already, and
even with the same diameter as well.
Same diameter, yeah.
Match up, and it is seamless.
Yeah. So it reduces the integrated one. It reduces sound a lot. When you go to the bigger calibers, obviously you can have more, but with 5.5 or 22, it's okay already.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think I've taken up a lot of your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't know. What should I add? I hope we'll come this year to EBR. We didn't had good luck with last couple of competitions.
I think last time you were at the airport, right? Last year?
Yeah.
And then something happened.
Yeah, they told me I didn't announce that we will bring guns.
Right.
And it's a Delta Airlines, so
yeah,
I guess
bummer for them.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of airlines to choose from, but yeah, this is what happened. Yeah, I read the instructions. It said that we have to register that we have guns to the clerk, or I don't know what term was used, and we did that.
Maybe send them way in advance to AOA.
Yeah, that's what they said. They said before we came to the gate. We passed the police. Everything was fine, and then we wanted to board, and they said no.
Oh man, yeah. I was actually standing. I don't know. I might have been standing next to Jared with AOA, and he had just talked to you, and I said, "Oh, what happened?" He said, "RTI's hung up at the airport." I was like, "Oh, that would have been great to see them." And the year prior, I was actually at the RTI house with Monty, Francisco, and Christian Rodriguez. So all those guys were the RTI guys. So I was like, "Oh, that would be a fun follow-up the next year to see RTI, the actual company here."
Yeah.
And then you got hung up. I was like, "Oh man." So yeah, it'd be great to see you at EBR. I hope to make it myself. And I don't know. I'm very excited about RTI in this coming year. I think you guys are going to be doing a lot of stuff, and I think the Mora is going to be a big hit, especially the bigger caliber and the sniper edition. I think Americans are we're kind of crazy on the power, so I think we're going to jump on that.
Yeah, it works really, really well. We are now basically doing the accuracy testing, which I mentioned. We do that with every gun, and you can see right away it is behaving even better than the P3. When you look at, you have to look at a volume, or you cannot compare one piece to one versus one. But when you take 20 rifles, and in average, you can see it behaves a lot better. So yeah, we are very excited.
And so for people to follow your stuff and kind of get to know the platform better, they should go to rtiarms.eu.
Yeah, exactly. That's the official site of RTI. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rock, for coming on, and maybe we'll have you on again in the future. And it's been a very informative podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. See you next time, and hopefully see you at EBR.
Hopefully. Take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Atlas Airguns podcast. If you liked today's episode, make sure to like with a 5-star rating, share, and subscribe to help us make more content.